My name is Alicia. I'm 63 years old. On Mother's Day, my millionaire son walked in and asked me a question that left me frozen. Mom, are you enjoying the $7,000 a month? I didn't know what to say. And just then, his ambitious wife stepped into the room. Moments like this make me wonder how far stories like mine can reach. Which city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd truly love to know. That afternoon, as always, the doorbell rang at exactly 3 p.m. I hurried to open it, drying my hands on the old apron I wear when cooking. I had prepared chicken mole, his favorite dish since childhood, and the smell filled the whole house, blending with the gardenias I had cut from the yard to decorate the table. I was standing in my kitchen, the smell of chicken mole filling every corner, when the doorbell rang at exactly 3 p.m. For 63 years I had lived in that same house, and I had learned to recognize the sounds of important visits. My heart raced because I knew it was Ricardo, my only son, the one who had left this small home years ago to build a fortune. Mother's Day was always bittersweet for me. I had very little, but his visits made me feel seen, even if they also reminded me of the distance between our worlds. When I opened the door, there he was, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, the kind that cost more than 3 months of my living expenses. His shoes shone so brightly that I could almost see my reflection in them. "Mom," he said with a smile that brought me back to when he was a child, proud after acing a school test. I hugged him tightly, breathing in the expensive cologne that clung to his suit. For a moment, I forgot the years of silence, the distance, the wealth that had pulled him away from me. He was my son again, the same little boy who once played soccer in the backyard. But then came the question that froze me. He looked into my eyes with that confident smile and asked, "Mom, are you enjoying the $7,000 a month?" My hands trembled. My lips wanted to answer, but no words came out. Because the truth was harsh. I hadn't seen a single penny of that money. I wasn't enjoying it. I was surviving thanks to the kindness of my church. My chest tightened with both shame and anger. How could he believe I was living comfortably when I barely had enough to keep the lights on? I finally whispered, "Son, the church is helping me survive." His smile faded for a second, replaced by confusion. But before I could explain further, another presence filled the doorway. Samantha, his wife, walked in with her perfect hair and a white dress that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. She held a bouquet of expensive flowers, her nails polished in flawless red, her eyes scanning my home with the cold calculation of someone measuring its worth. She leaned in to hug me, but her embrace was mechanical, void of warmth. "Happy Mother's Day, Alicia," she said in a sweet voice that never managed to convince me. I forced a smile and thanked her, though deep down I felt a heaviness in my chest. There was always something in her eyes that unsettled me, as if she was constantly plotting, constantly evaluating how to take more. I let them in, leading them to the living room, where so many memories of Ricardo's childhood lingered. The living room had seen it all. The afternoons when Ricardo studied for exams, the evenings he practiced piano, and the night he announced that he was going to marry Samantha. I remembered the happiness in his eyes that night, a happiness I never fully trusted because I could see the ambition in hers. Sitting down on the same couch, they looked like strangers in my own home. I tried to hide my unease by focusing on the details, the mole simmering in the kitchen, the fresh gardenias on the table. Ricardo spoke casually about his business trips, his new cars, and the upcoming vacation he and Samantha were planning in Europe. I nodded politely, but his words felt like knives. I wanted to tell him about my leaking roof, about the nights I slept with an extra blanket because the heater no longer worked. But I stayed silent. My pride wouldn't let me beg. My faith told me to endure. Yet deep down, a storm was building inside me. That $7,000 he spoke of, money I had never received, hung in the air like a cruel joke. Samantha's smile only fueled my suspicion that she had something to do with it. And though I didn't know it yet, that day would mark the beginning of a truth far darker than I had imagined. As we sat together, I noticed the way Samantha crossed her legs, carefully placing her designer purse on the coffee table, as though to claim territory. She glanced at the old photos on the wall, Ricardo in his school uniform, me holding him as a baby, and her lips curved into the faintest smirk. It was as if she saw those memories not as treasures, but as relics of a life far beneath her. My stomach tightened. I had endured her presence for years, but today felt different. There was an edge in her demeanor, something sharper than usual. Ricardo, unaware or unwilling to see it, asked again about the money. "Mom, you really should be living better now. $7,000 a month should cover everything, right?" His tone was almost playful, as though he was proud of himself for providing. My throat burned with the weight of truth. I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I hadn't received any of it. Samantha's eyes flickered toward me, and for a split second, I caught something there, an awareness, a secret she didn't want revealed. I shifted in my chair and tried to redirect the conversation. "I made your favorite dish," I said, forcing a smile. "Chicken mole. Just like when you were a boy." Ricardo's face lit up, and for a brief moment I saw my son again. The boy who used to come home hungry after soccer practice, running straight to the kitchen for a plate. My heart softened, but Samantha's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "That's sweet," she said, her words dripping with sarcasm. "But Ricardo doesn't eat heavy sauces anymore. He prefers lighter, healthier meals now." Her dismissal stung, but I swallowed my pride. I stood, excused myself, and went to the kitchen to bring out the food. As I arranged the plates, I prayed silently, asking for strength. The church had been my refuge, the only place that gave me hope when life felt unbearable. But even faith couldn't shield me from the pain of watching my son slip further from me, wrapped in the influence of a woman who seemed determined to erase every part of his past. When I returned with the food, Ricardo smiled politely and took a bite. For a moment I saw the light of nostalgia in his eyes, but Samantha pushed her plate away, uninterested. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and began typing furiously. I wanted to ask her what she was doing, but I bit my tongue. It wasn't my place. Not in her eyes, at least. My home. Yet she made me feel like an intruder. Dinner carried on in tense silence. Ricardo tried to break it with stories of his company, of meetings with powerful men whose names I didn't recognize. I nodded, pretending to understand, though I couldn't care less about his world of wealth. I only wanted my son back, the boy who once needed me, who once told me I was his entire world. But that boy seemed long gone. As I cleared the table, I overheard Samantha whisper something to Ricardo. Her tone was low, but the word money slipped out, sharp as a dagger. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't need to hear the rest to know. She was at the center of the missing $7,000. I felt it in my bones. But how could I confront her without proof? That night after they left, I sat alone in the dark living room. The gardenias had begun to wilt, their fragrance fading. I folded the apron in my lap and stared at the empty dishes. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I whispered a prayer. I asked for clarity, for truth, for a way to reach my son's heart again. Because deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a painful journey, one that would test every ounce of strength I had left. The following week, the church invited me to help with a food drive. I gladly volunteered, as it gave me a chance to escape the loneliness of my home and surround myself with people who truly cared. While stacking cans of beans and bags of rice, I couldn't shake the memory of Ricardo's question. His proud tone echoed in my ears. Are you enjoying the $7,000 a month? The words felt like a cruel joke, mocking the reality of my empty refrigerator and my overdue bills. I whispered to myself, where is that money going? As I handed out bags of food to struggling families, I thought about how ironic it was. They came with gratitude, thanking me for giving them a little hope. But inside, I was just like them, surviving on scraps, depending on others. I should have been in a better place. If Ricardo truly was sending money, my life shouldn't have been this hard. And yet, here I was, standing under the sun with calloused hands, giving away food I couldn't afford for myself. One of the pastors noticed my tired expression. "Alicia," he said gently, "you've been carrying something heavy. You can't hide it forever." His words pierced through me, but I smiled weakly and shook my head. I wasn't ready to tell anyone. Pride kept me silent. But inside, the truth was clawing to get out. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. That evening, back in my kitchen, I opened my pantry and stared at the nearly empty shelves. A few bags of rice, some beans, a bottle of oil. That was all. I sat at the table holding my head in my hands. My son was wealthy beyond imagination. Yet I was living like this. The bitterness in my chest grew heavier with every passing day. When the phone rang, I nearly jumped. It was Ricardo. His voice was cheerful, as if nothing in the world could bother him. "Mom," he said, "Samantha and I are going to Europe next week. Paris, Rome, Madrid. You'd love it. Maybe someday we'll take you." His words twisted inside me. Someday? When? After I'm gone? I forced a laugh, pretending to be happy for him. My heart, however, cracked deeper. As we spoke, I wanted to scream the truth. "Ricardo, I've never received the money. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm barely surviving." But I couldn't. I couldn't bear the thought of his disappointment, or worse, his disbelief. What if he thought I was lying? What if he chose her side over mine? The silence in my heart weighed heavier than words. When I hung up, I pressed the receiver against my chest and let the tears fall. I thought of Samantha, her cold eyes, her smug smile. Every instinct told me she was the reason. The money, if it existed at all, was in her hands. And Ricardo, blinded by love, couldn't see it. My prayer that night was different. It wasn't just for strength. It was for truth to come to light. I went to bed restless, the shadows of doubt haunting me. My dreams were filled with echoes of Ricardo's voice, repeating the same question over and over. "Are you enjoying the $7,000 a month?" By morning, I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't find the courage to uncover the truth, it would destroy me. Days passed, and Samantha's shadow seemed to linger in my home, even when she wasn't there. I cleaned the house obsessively, as though scrubbing the floors and dusting the shelves could erase the memory of her perfume, her judgmental gaze. But nothing could erase the doubt in my heart. If Ricardo truly sent the money, someone had intercepted it, and I already knew who that someone was. One afternoon, as I returned from the market, I noticed an envelope sticking out from under my front door. My heart raced. I picked it up, my hands trembling. It was a bank statement. Ricardo's bank statement. I frowned, confused. Why would it be delivered to my address? Curiosity overcame fear, and I opened it. What I saw nearly knocked the breath out of me. Month after month, $7,000 had indeed been transferred. But not to me. It was going directly into an account under Samantha's name. The walls closed in around me. My suspicion was true all along. My knees weakened, and I sank into a chair, clutching the papers like they were evidence in a trial. My son believed he was helping me, but the truth was far darker. His wife had been stealing from me, stealing from him, right under his nose. My stomach twisted in pain. How could I ever tell him without breaking his heart? For hours I sat in silence, staring at the numbers on the page. The truth was heavy, almost unbearable. Every month, while I scraped together coins for bread and counted every drop of oil, Samantha had been living luxuriously on money meant for me. I imagined her expensive clothes, her polished nails, the vacations, the dinners, all paid with Ricardo's generosity. My anger burned hotter than ever, but anger quickly gave way to fear. If I confronted her, she would deny it. Worse, she could turn Ricardo against me. She had a hold on him, a charm that blinded him to her greed. If I revealed the truth, would he even believe me? Or would he see me as bitter, jealous, ungrateful? The thought made me sick. That night, I couldn't eat. I pushed away the simple meal I had prepared, and instead sat at the table with the papers spread before me. My hands trembled as I prayed for wisdom. God had given me proof, but now I had to find the courage to use it. Silence had protected me for too long. Now, silence could destroy me. The next morning, I dressed in my Sunday best and went to church. As the choir sang softly, I sat in the pew with the envelope hidden in my bag. My heart pounded with every verse. I wanted to confide in someone, but fear sealed my lips. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to find the right moment, the right way to reveal the truth. And yet, deep inside, a voice whispered that waiting too long could be dangerous. Samantha was clever. If she suspected that I knew, she would strike first. I left the church with a heavy heart, clutching the evidence close to my chest. My journey of survival had now turned into a battle for truth. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to win. The following Sunday, Ricardo arrived again, right on time at 3 p.m. I had spent the entire week rehearsing what I might say, how I might bring up the truth without shattering him. But when I opened the door and saw his warm smile, my courage crumbled. He carried a small box of chocolates, a simple gift, and handed them to me as if nothing in the world was wrong. Samantha followed close behind, her heels clicking against the tiles, her eyes cold and sharp. We sat in the living room just as before. Ricardo spoke about his company's growth, about new partnerships, about success after success. I nodded, but I barely heard him. My gaze kept drifting toward Samantha. Her smile was practiced, her laugh hollow. I wondered how many lies she had told him to keep him blind. Did he know nothing? Or did he choose not to see? When Ricardo excused himself to take a call, I found myself alone with her. The silence between us was heavy, charged like a storm waiting to break. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms and said, "You know, Alicia, Ricardo worries about you a lot. He thinks you're living well now." Her voice carried a mocking sweetness, as if she already knew I hadn't received a cent. I wanted to scream at her, to slam the bank statement on the table and expose her lies. But instead I bit my tongue. My hands clenched on my lap, and I whispered a prayer for patience. Samantha's eyes gleamed as though she could sense my restraint, as though she thrived on it. She enjoyed the power, the silence, the secret she thought I couldn't touch. When Ricardo returned, she instantly shifted, her voice bright and cheerful. "Darling, your mom was just telling me how wonderful it is that you take such good care of her." My stomach turned. She was twisting the knife deeper, using his love as a weapon. I forced a smile, but inside my heart was breaking. Dinner felt like a battlefield. Every word, every glance carried unspoken tension. Ricardo remained oblivious, savoring his meal and chatting about future plans. Meanwhile, Samantha played her part perfectly. The dutiful wife, the loving daughter-in-law. And I sat quietly, torn between truth and fear, between exposing her and protecting him. After they left that night, I sat in the dark, staring at the empty plates. My hands trembled as I finally pulled out the bank statement. I traced the numbers again, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't stay silent forever, but the question haunted me. Would Ricardo stand by me? Or by her? That night, I whispered to God once more, "Give me strength, not for myself but for my son. Let him see the truth before it's too late." My prayer lingered in the silence, carried by faith alone. The days grew colder, and with them, my resolve hardened. I knew I couldn't live in the shadows of Samantha's deception forever. One morning, as I watered the gardenias in my yard, my neighbor Clara approached. She was a kind woman, always ready to share a smile or a warm meal. But that day her eyes were curious. "Alicia," she said softly, "I couldn't help but notice. Your son, he seems so wealthy. Yet I see you struggling. Are you all right?" Her words cut deeper than she realized. Shame rose in my chest, but I forced a smile. "I'm fine, Clara. God provides." She nodded, though her eyes betrayed her doubt. As she walked away, I felt the weight of secrecy pressing down harder than ever. I wasn't just hiding the truth from Ricardo. I was hiding it from everyone. Later that afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with the statement spread out before me. The inked numbers mocked me. $7,000 a month, every month, stolen. My hands trembled as I reached for a pen and paper. I began to write a letter to Ricardo. Each word was heavy, soaked in sorrow and fear. "My son, there is something you need to know." But halfway through, my hand froze. If Samantha found the letter, she could twist it, destroy it, or worse, use it against me. I tore the letter into pieces, my heart pounding. Silence still felt safer, even though it was killing me inside. I sat back, staring at the scraps of paper on the table, and realized how trapped I had become. A prisoner in my own home, chained not by walls, but by fear. That evening I went to church once again. As I lit a candle, Pastor Miguel approached me. "Alicia," he said gently. "Sometimes God places the truth in our hands, but it is up to us to deliver it. Do not fear the storm. Fear what happens if you remain silent." His words struck me like thunder. I knew he was right. The truth was not mine to bury. It was Ricardo's to face. Walking home that night, the cool wind brushed against my skin. I clutched my shawl tighter, whispering to myself, "I can't hide this forever. I must find a way." My steps were slow, but with each one my resolve grew stronger. Back in my room, I opened my old wooden chest and carefully placed the bank statement inside, beneath my Bible. If Samantha ever came near it, she would never find it there. I sat on the bed, holding the Bible to my chest, praying for courage. As I drifted to sleep, one thought echoed in my mind. The day of truth was coming, whether I was ready or not. The next weekend arrived, and with it, Ricardo's visit. I had prepared myself all week, telling myself that this would be the day I spoke the truth. Yet when the doorbell rang and I saw his smile, my resolve faltered again. He entered with the same warmth as always, carrying a bouquet of roses this time. Samantha trailed behind him, her heels clicking on the floor like an omen. My chest tightened, but I invited them in with trembling hands. Ricardo placed the roses on the table, inhaling the aroma of my cooking. "Mom, you spoil me," he said with a grin. My heart swelled at his words, but Samantha's eyes rolled slightly as if annoyed by his affection. She sat down, immediately pulling out her phone. Her detachment was insulting, but Ricardo seemed not to notice. His attention was on me, on the meal, on the memories of home. I wanted to tell him right there, to pull out the statement and show him the truth. But Samantha's presence was suffocating. Every time our eyes met, I saw a silent warning. "Don't you dare." My throat closed. My courage fled. Instead, I smiled weakly and served them both plates of food, swallowing the words that burned inside me. During dinner, Ricardo shared a story about his latest business trip, about meetings in high-rise buildings and lunches in restaurants I couldn't even imagine. His eyes sparkled with pride. I listened, but all I could think about was the money slipping into Samantha's account each month. Money that was supposed to keep me alive. My stomach churned, though I forced myself to eat. At one point, Samantha leaned closer to Ricardo and whispered something in his ear. He laughed softly, squeezing her hand. The sight made me sick. She was winning, controlling him in ways I couldn't fight. I looked away, my eyes falling on the wilted gardenias on the table. Their fading beauty mirrored my own fading strength. When dinner ended, Ricardo hugged me tightly, thanking me for the meal. "I'll call you soon, Mom," he promised. His sincerity broke me inside. I wanted to beg him to stay, to listen, to see the truth, but the words never came. He left, his arm wrapped around Samantha's waist, her triumphant smile aimed at me like a dagger. The house was silent once they were gone. I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring into the darkness. The roses he had brought still sat on the table, their petals soft and vibrant. I touched them gently, whispering to myself, "One day, Ricardo, one day, you'll know the truth." That night, I placed the roses in a vase beside the bank statement, hidden in my chest. 2 symbols, one of his love, the other of her betrayal. My heart carried both, and it was tearing me apart. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. I went about my chores, sweeping the floors, tending the garden, preparing simple meals. But my mind was never free. The bank statement haunted me. Samantha's smirk haunted me. Even Ricardo's smile, once a source of comfort, now filled me with sorrow. I was living in 2 worlds, one of love and one of lies. One morning, as I walked to the market, I overheard 2 women talking near the bakery. They were gossiping about Samantha, their voices low but sharp. "She always has the latest clothes," one said. "And that car she drives. Where does all that money come from?" My steps faltered. They didn't know the truth, but I did. My stomach twisted. Back home, I sat at the table and replayed their words in my mind. Samantha was flaunting her stolen wealth openly, shamelessly. How long could this go on before Ricardo realized something was wrong? I clenched my fists, anger burning hotter than ever. I could no longer ignore it. Silence was not protecting my son. It was protecting her. That evening I called Clara, my neighbor, and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I hesitated, unsure if I could trust anyone with the truth. But her kind eyes gave me strength. I showed her the bank statement, my hands trembling as I placed it on the table. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Alicia, this is theft. You can't stay quiet." Tears filled my eyes as I nodded. "I know, Clara. But if I tell Ricardo, what if he doesn't believe me? What if he chooses her over me?" The fear in my chest was real, suffocating. Clara placed her hand on mine, firm and steady. "If he loves you, he will listen. And if he doesn't, then the truth will set you free, even if it hurts." Her words lingered long after she left. That night I sat in the dark, the statement once again in my hands. My reflection stared back at me from the window. An old woman, tired, afraid, but not defeated. For the first time I felt a spark of courage. Clara was right. I couldn't carry this burden alone anymore. I prayed harder than ever, asking God for the right moment, the right words. My faith was my only weapon, but it had carried me through storms before. It would carry me now. As I blew out the candle beside my bed, I whispered, "Tomorrow, if the chance comes, I will not be silent." The darkness answered only with silence, but my heart knew. The time of truth was drawing near. The next Sunday came, and with it, another visit. I had prepared chicken mole again, even though I knew Samantha disliked it. Somehow, cooking it made me feel closer to Ricardo, to the boy he once was. The aroma filled the kitchen, but this time my hands trembled as I stirred the pot. Today, I told myself. Today I would no longer remain silent. When the doorbell rang at 3 p.m., my heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Ricardo entered first, smiling warmly, carrying a small gift bag. Samantha followed, dressed in another extravagant outfit, her eyes scanning the house like a hawk. "Happy Mother's Day again," Ricardo said playfully, though the holiday had already passed. "Every day should be your day, Mom." His words melted my heart, but also deepened my pain. We sat at the table, and as I served the food, Ricardo eagerly tasted it, smiling with nostalgia. Samantha barely touched her plate, pushing it aside with disdain. Her disdain no longer surprised me. What mattered was the truth I carried in my chest. I glanced at her, then at Ricardo, and my hands tightened around the envelope hidden in my apron pocket. As Ricardo spoke about his recent travels, my mind drifted. I saw flashes of the empty pantry, the unpaid bills, the sleepless nights. I heard the whispers of the women in the bakery, the voice of Clara telling me not to stay quiet. The truth burned like fire inside me, begging to be released. I clutched the envelope tighter, but when I looked into Ricardo's eyes, filled with pride and innocence, I froze. Could I really shatter his world with this truth? Could I risk losing him forever? My lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, I forced a smile and whispered, "I'm glad you're here, Ricardo." Samantha's smirk widened, as if she had won a battle I hadn't even fought. Dinner passed in heavy silence. Ricardo didn't notice, too absorbed in sharing his plans. But Samantha's gaze never left me. It was sharp, challenging, as though she knew exactly what I was hiding. My stomach churned with both fear and determination. She wouldn't silence me forever. When they left that night, Ricardo hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'll call you tomorrow, Mom." His embrace was warm, genuine. Samantha lingered behind, her eyes locking with mine. She leaned closer and whispered so only I could hear, "Stay out of our business, or you'll regret it." Her words chilled me to the bone. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed clutching my Bible, the envelope tucked safely beneath it, and prayed for the strength to face the storm I knew was coming. The next day, Ricardo called just as he promised. His voice was cheerful, full of energy. "Mom, Samantha and I are planning another trip soon. Maybe we'll bring you something from Italy this time." I forced a laugh, but my chest ached. How could he be so blind? How could he not see the truth standing beside him? After the call, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the statement once more. My hands trembled as I whispered, "God, I can't do this alone. Show me the way." Just then, the phone rang again. It was Clara. "Alicia," she said firmly, "you can't keep living in fear. Let me help you. If you don't want to face Ricardo alone, I'll be by your side." Her words were a lifeline, and tears streamed down my face. That evening, Clara came over bringing fresh bread from the bakery. We sat together, the statement spread out on the table. She looked at me with determination. "You're not alone anymore. If Samantha tries to deny it, I'll stand with you. Sometimes truth needs more than one voice." Her courage fueled mine. For the first time, I felt I could actually face this. The following Sunday, when Ricardo arrived again, Clara was waiting with me. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw her, but he smiled warmly. Samantha, however, froze for a moment, her eyes narrowing. She didn't like surprises. I could see it in the way her lips tightened. We all sat together, and my heart pounded as I reached for the envelope. My hands shook, but Clara's hand rested on mine, steadying me. "Ricardo," I began, my voice trembling. "There's something you need to see. Something I should have told you long ago." I slid the envelope across the table toward him. Ricardo frowned, confused, and opened it. His eyes scanned the pages slowly. At first, his expression was blank, But then confusion turned to disbelief, and disbelief to anger. He looked up, his voice breaking. "Mom, what is this?" Samantha shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her hands clenching her dress. Tears filled my eyes. "This is the truth, Ricardo. The money you thought you were sending me, it never reached me. It's been going into Samantha's account all along." The words felt like daggers leaving my lips, cutting through the silence. For the first time, Ricardo didn't look at me or at Samantha. He looked at the numbers on the page, his hands trembling, his entire world shattering before my eyes. Ricardo sat in silence, his eyes glued to the paper. The ticking of the old clock on the wall grew louder, filling the heavy air. Samantha shifted in her chair, her face pale but her eyes still sharp, calculating. "Ricardo, don't listen to this nonsense," she said quickly. "It's a mistake, some kind of mix-up at the bank." But her voice cracked, betraying her fear. Clara leaned forward, her tone steady. "It's no mistake. I've seen the statements with my own eyes. Month after month the transfers go to her account, not your mother's." Ricardo's hands trembled as he turned the pages again, searching for a loophole, some way to deny the truth. But the numbers didn't lie. Finally he looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "Mom, all this time I thought..." His voice broke, and he buried his face in his hands. My heart ached at the sight. I reached for his arm, whispering, "I didn't want to hurt you, Ricardo." But I couldn't keep living in silence. Tears burned my eyes as I held back the years of pain I had carried alone. Samantha stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You two planned this," she snapped, pointing at Clara and me. "You're jealous. You want to turn him against me. Ricardo, don't let them poison you." Her words were venomous, but I could see panic rising in her. Ricardo looked at her then, really looked, as though seeing her for the first time. The confident smile he always wore when speaking of her was gone. In its place was doubt, confusion, and hurt. "Samantha," he said slowly, "tell me the truth. Did you take the money?" For the first time since I had met her, she faltered. Her eyes darted away, her lips pressed tightly together. The silence was louder than any denial she could have given. Ricardo's face hardened. He slammed the papers on the table, his voice trembling with anger. "How could you?" The room seemed to close in around us. Samantha tried to regain control, reaching for his hand. "Ricardo, I did it for us. For our future. Your mother doesn't need that kind of money. Look at her house, her lifestyle. She wouldn't even know what to do with it." Her words were cruel, slicing through me like knives. But Ricardo pulled his hand away, his jaw clenched. His world was crumbling. And for once, I wasn't the one holding the secret. The truth was laid bare, and there was no going back. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ricardo stood, pacing the room, his hand running through his hair in frustration. "All these years," he muttered, "I thought I was taking care of you, Mom. I thought you were safe, comfortable." His voice cracked, and he turned to me, eyes full of regret. "And you were suffering in silence." I rose slowly, my knees weak, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ricardo, you couldn't have known. I didn't tell you because I feared losing you. I feared she would turn you against me." My voice trembled, but my words carried the truth of my heart. He closed his eyes, nodding, the weight of betrayal settling over him. Samantha, still standing near the door, crossed her arms defiantly. "So what now? You're going to throw everything away because of a piece of paper? You're going to believe her over me?" Her tone was sharp, but I could see the cracks in her mask. She was fighting a battle she knew she was losing. Ricardo turned to her, his voice steady now, though laced with pain. "This isn't just a piece of paper. It's proof. Proof that you've been lying to me, stealing from me, betraying not just my mother, but me." His words cut through the room, leaving Samantha speechless. Clara shifted in her seat, her eyes on me, silently urging me to stay strong. I held Ricardo's gaze, tears streaming down my face. "I only wanted you to know the truth," I whispered. "Whatever happens next is your choice." For a long moment, Ricardo said nothing. He just stared at Samantha, as if weighing every memory, every promise, every smile she had ever given him. Finally he spoke. "Leave." His voice was low, but firm. Final. "Get out of this house." Samantha's eyes widened in shock. She opened her mouth to argue, but Ricardo raised his hand, stopping her cold. "Not another word. Go." The authority in his tone silenced even her. With one last venomous glance at me, she grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The echo of the door reverberated through the room, leaving only the three of us, Ricardo, Clara, and me, in the quiet aftermath. My son sank into the couch, his face in his hands, and for the first time in years, I felt both relief and sorrow mingling inside me. The battle was over, but the wounds were deep. The house felt eerily quiet after Samantha's departure, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Ricardo sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, his face hidden in his hands. I wanted to hold him, to comfort him, but I knew he needed a moment to face the storm inside him. Clara remained silent too, her presence steady, like an anchor in turbulent waters. Finally, Ricardo lifted his head, his eyes red with unshed tears. "Mom," he whispered, his voice heavy with guilt. "I failed you. All these years, I thought I was helping. But I was blind. Blind to her lies. Blind to your suffering." His pain was palpable, each word cutting me as deeply as it cut him. I shook my head gently, reaching for his hand. "You didn't fail me, Ricardo," I said softly. "You trusted someone you loved. That isn't weakness. It's humanity. What matters is that now you see the truth." My words trembled, but I meant every one of them. Ricardo squeezed my hand tightly, as if clinging to it for strength. Clara leaned forward, her tone firm but kind. "Ricardo, the enemy isn't your mother. It never was. The person who betrayed you is gone now. But you can't let her lies keep you from healing what matters most. Your bond with your mother." Ricardo nodded slowly, absorbing her words. His shoulders trembled as he exhaled deeply. "I don't even know where to start," he admitted. "How do I make up for lost years? For the nights she was alone, while I believed she was cared for?" His voice cracked again, and I felt my own tears fall. I brushed them away quickly, not wanting him to see my weakness. "Start with today," I whispered. "Start by being here. That's all I ever wanted, to have my son back." My voice broke at the end, but Ricardo pulled me into his arms before the silence could swallow my words. For the first time in years, I felt the warmth of his embrace, without shadows between us. We stayed like that for what felt like an eternity. My cheek against his chest, his arms holding me tightly, as if he feared I would slip away. In that moment, the pain of betrayal was softened by the healing touch of reconciliation. And yet, even in the safety of his arms, I knew our battle wasn't over. Samantha was gone from this house, but not from our lives. The scars she left would take time to heal. The days that followed were both tender and heavy. Ricardo came to visit more often, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just his company. He repaired the leaky faucet in the kitchen, fixed the squeaky door, and even painted the old gate outside. Each act of care felt like a balm, a silent apology for the years lost. But behind his smile I could still see the shadow of guilt. One afternoon, as we drank coffee together at the kitchen table, Ricardo spoke. "Mom, I've decided to freeze all the accounts Samantha had access to. She won't take another cent from me. Or from you." His tone was resolute, but his eyes were clouded with sorrow. "I loved her, Mom, or at least I thought I did. How could I have been so blind?" I reached across the table, resting my hand on his. "Love can be blinding, Ricardo. But love is also what brings us back to the truth. Don't see this as failure. See it as a lesson. You are stronger now because of it." My words seemed to soothe him, though the pain lingered. Clara joined us later that day, bringing a homemade pie. She smiled warmly at Ricardo, treating him not as a broken man, but as someone finding his way again. "The truth always leaves scars," she said. "But scars are proof that we've survived. You both survived this storm, and now you must decide how to live beyond it." Ricardo nodded, though his jaw tightened. "I don't want to just survive, Clara. I want to make sure my mother never suffers again. I want to rebuild what I broke." His voice carried determination, but also a fragility I hadn't heard since he was a child. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on his words. For years I had prayed for this moment, not for wealth, not for comfort, but for my son's heart to return to me. Now those prayers were being answered, piece by piece. Yet I also knew that healing was a long road. The cracks Samantha had left in his trust, in his soul, wouldn't disappear overnight. But as I clutched my Bible to my chest, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Perhaps God had allowed this storm not to destroy us, but to bring us back together. And though fear still lingered at the edges of my mind, hope had finally taken root in my heart again. Weeks passed, and with each visit Ricardo seemed lighter, freer, as though a heavy chain had finally been lifted from his shoulders. He laughed more often, even at the smallest things, like the squeak of the floorboards or the crooked painting in the hallway he used to mock as a boy. For me, those laughs were treasures. Each one reminded me that my son was still there, beneath all the scars Samantha had left. Yet even in our renewed closeness, shadows remained. I often caught him staring at the floor in silence, his brow furrowed, lost in thought. When I asked what was wrong, he would force a smile and say, "Nothing, Mom. I'm just thinking." But I knew better. Betrayal doesn't leave easily. It lingers like a bruise beneath the skin, tender to every touch. One evening as we sat outside watching the sunset, Ricardo finally spoke. "Mom, I don't know if I can ever trust again. She took so much from me. Not just money, but years of my life. My faith in love." His voice was raw, vulnerable, like a child admitting fear. I placed my hand over his and whispered, "Then start by trusting yourself again. That's where healing begins." He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening in the fading light. "You're right. I lost myself in her, but I don't want to lose who I am anymore." For the first time, I saw resolve replacing his doubt. It was the spark of a new beginning, even if the path ahead was uncertain. Clara continued to visit, her presence gentle but steady. She reminded Ricardo that not all people were cruel, that kindness still existed. Sometimes she shared verses from scripture, other times just stories from her own life. Her wisdom became a lantern in our darkness. Despite everything, Samantha wasn't completely gone. Rumors of her surfaced in town, sightings of her in expensive stores, whispers of her planning a new life elsewhere. Each time I heard her name, a chill ran through me. I knew she wasn't done with us. Not yet. But for now, peace lingered in our home. Ricardo helped me repair the roof, repaint the kitchen, and even planted new gardenias in the yard. Life was fragile, but it was ours again. And that fragile beauty was enough to keep me moving forward. Still at night, when the house grew quiet, I found myself praying the same prayer. Lord, let this peace last. Let this bond stay strong. Don't let her shadow return. The church community had noticed the change in me. I smiled more, I sang louder during hymns, and I walked with a lighter step. Pastor Miguel approached me one Sunday and said, "Alicia, your spirit has been renewed. Whatever storm you faced, I can see God's light has carried you through." His words warmed me, though deep down I knew the storm wasn't fully over. That afternoon, Ricardo joined me at church for the first time in years. People welcomed him warmly, shaking his hand, thanking him for visiting. I watched with pride as he bowed his head during prayer, his voice soft but sincere. It was as if he was rediscovering a part of himself he had long forgotten. After the service, we walked home together. Ricardo carried my bag of groceries without me asking, a simple gesture that filled my heart with joy. "Mom," he said quietly, "I see now how blind I was. I don't just want to repair our bond. I want to rebuild my faith, too. Maybe I lost everything for a reason. Maybe it was so I could find my way back here." Tears filled my eyes as I listened. "God never abandons us, Ricardo," I said gently. "Sometimes He allows us to walk through darkness so we can truly appreciate the light." He nodded, his jaw firm, as though carving those words into his heart. That evening, Clara joined us for dinner. We laughed together, sharing stories, and for the first time in years, the house echoed with genuine joy. Ricardo looked at me across the table and said, "I feel like I'm finally coming home." Those words were the answer to every prayer I had whispered in the quiet of the night. Yet even in our laughter, I caught a glimpse of Ricardo's shadowed eyes. Healing had begun, yes, but scars remained. Samantha had taken much, and part of me feared she would try to take more. I prayed silently, asking God to shield us from whatever lay ahead. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat in the quiet living room surrounded by fresh gardenias. The fragrance filled the air, reminding me of resilience, of renewal. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for giving me back my son and for teaching us both to rise again." But in the depths of my heart, I knew the journey wasn't finished. There was still one final test ahead, one that would determine whether our new beginning would last or crumble. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly settled into a fragile rhythm. Ricardo visited regularly, bringing food, fixing little things around the house, and staying longer each time. I cherished every moment, but I also sensed a storm still brewing within him. Samantha's betrayal had cut deep, and though he rarely spoke of her, I knew her shadow haunted him. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at the gardenias with a distant gaze, as though remembering everything that had been lost. One evening, while repairing the old fence outside, Ricardo paused and leaned against the wood, sighing heavily. "Mom," he said, his voice low, "I thought building wealth would make me strong, untouchable. But the truth is, it left me empty. Samantha filled that emptiness with lies, and I didn't even notice. Now I don't know who I am without all of it." His words pierced me like arrows. I walked closer and touched his arm. "Ricardo, you are not your wealth. You are not your mistakes. You are my son, the boy who used to chase butterflies in this yard, the young man who studied under this roof, the man who still has a heart capable of love. That's who you are." Tears shimmered in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away, unwilling to break. That night he stayed for dinner. Clara joined us, and the three of us shared laughter again. But later, when Clara left and the house grew quiet, Ricardo lingered in the living room. "Mom," he whispered, "I can't shake this guilt. Every time I look at you, I see the years you suffered because I was blind. How can I forgive myself for that?" I sat beside him, my hand on his. "Forgiveness doesn't start with others, Ricardo. It starts within. You don't need to punish yourself forever. You need to rebuild, one choice at a time." My words seemed to soften him, though I could see the war in his heart was far from over. He leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "Sometimes I wonder if God still has a plan for me, or if I've ruined it all." My heart ached at his doubt, but I knew this was part of his journey. Only through brokenness could he rediscover strength. Before going to bed, I prayed harder than ever. "Lord, guide him. Don't let him drown in guilt. Show him the words, the path, the truth that will set him free." I didn't know it then, but the answer was already on its way. 9 simple words that would change everything. The following Sunday felt different. Ricardo arrived earlier than usual, carrying a notebook in his hand. His expression was heavy, but his eyes carried a strange determination. We sat together at the table, and he pushed the notebook toward me. "Mom, I've been writing," he said quietly, "trying to make sense of everything. My failures, my regrets, my hopes." His voice shook slightly, but there was courage in it. I opened the notebook carefully, my fingers brushing over his handwriting. The pages were filled with raw confessions, lines about his blindness, his trust in Samantha, his guilt over my suffering. But sprinkled between the pain were glimpses of hope, words that revealed a man searching for redemption. My heart swelled as I read. When I looked up, Ricardo was watching me nervously. "Do you think there's a way forward, Mom? Do you think I can start again?" His vulnerability brought tears to my eyes. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Of course, Ricardo. Every storm ends. Every wound heals. You just have to believe it's possible." Clara arrived later that afternoon, and together we shared a quiet meal. Ricardo seemed calmer, even smiling a little. But as the evening fell, he grew silent again, staring at the notebook he had brought. Finally, he whispered, "There's something I've written that I can't stop repeating to myself. Just 9 words. But they feel like the beginning of something new." I leaned closer. My breath caught in my chest. "What are they, Ricardo?" I asked gently. He closed the notebook, holding it tightly, his eyes glistening. "Not yet, Mom," he whispered. "But soon. When I'm ready." His voice was steady, but the weight of those words hung in the air like a promise. That night, after he left, I sat by the window, staring at the gardenias blooming under the moonlight. My heart was heavy with anticipation. What 9 words could carry such power, such hope? I didn't know, but I trusted that when Ricardo spoke them, they would mark the turning point of everything. I whispered into the silence, "Lord, let those words bring him peace. Let them be the key to his healing." And in the stillness of that night, I felt it in my soul. The true revelation was near. For years I had lived in silence, trapped between fear, shame, and the weight of betrayal. I had convinced myself that speaking out would destroy my bond with Ricardo, that telling the truth would push him away forever. Instead, it was the silence that nearly broke us apart. Now, as the storm cleared, I realized something profound. It wasn't the money, or even Samantha's lies that had held me prisoner. It was the belief that I was powerless. Ricardo came to see me one evening, his notebook still in his hands. He looked different, lighter somehow, but also determined. "Mom," he said softly, sitting across from me at the table, "I'm ready now. I've been carrying these 9 words inside me, and I think they're the reason I've been able to stand back up." My breath caught in my chest. After all the pain, all the silence, this moment felt sacred. He opened the notebook and read them aloud, his voice trembling but strong. "I am not broken. I am becoming someone new." Or 9 simple words, yet they carried the weight of years of guilt, shame, and regret, and the hope of transformation. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I listened. Those words weren't just for him. They were for me too. For every night I cried in silence, for every day I endured with nothing but faith to keep me alive. In his voice I heard the promise that neither of us would ever be the same again. "Mom," Ricardo said, his hand covering mine. "I thought I had lost everything, but what I've really found is myself again. Those words are my anchor now. Every time the past tries to drag me down, I remind myself, I am not broken. I am becoming someone new." His eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw my son, not as the boy I raised or the man who was deceived, but as someone reborn. I nodded, my heart swelling with pride. And I am proud of you, Ricardo. Not for your wealth, not for your success, but for your courage to face the truth and rise again. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. And in that moment, all the wounds of the past began to close. Clara joined us later, and when Ricardo shared his 9 words with her, she smiled through tears. "That is the kind of truth that changes lives," she said softly. And I knew she was right. Those 9 words were more than a confession. They were the beginning of a new story, one that would carry us forward into light. The house felt different after that night, as though a veil had been lifted. Ricardo visited not out of guilt, but out of love. We shared meals, laughter, and prayers. Each time he left, I no longer felt the sting of abandonment, but the warmth of hope. Samantha's shadow no longer defined our lives. Ricardo's 9 words did. Still, I thought often about the years I had spent waiting, enduring, surviving. There were moments when I felt invisible, forgotten, discarded by the very son I had raised. And yet, through it all, God carried me. He gave me the strength to endure until Ricardo was ready to see the truth for himself. One afternoon, as we walked together through the garden, Ricardo stopped and looked at me with a smile. "Mom, if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Storms don't destroy us. They shape us. They teach us who we really are." His words echoed the very faith that had kept me alive through the darkest nights. I nodded, holding back tears. "And sometimes," I whispered, "the storm gives us exactly what we need, the words that guide us home." We stood there in silence, the gardenias blooming around us, the fragrance wrapping us in peace. That evening before leaving, Ricardo hugged me tightly. "Mom," he said, "I left something in the pinned comment below. That's where it all begins, with just 9 simple words." He smiled, his voice steady, his heart stronger than ever. After he left, I sat by the window, the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. I whispered his 9 words to myself, letting them settle into my heart. I am not broken. I am becoming someone new. And for the first time in years, I truly believed them. My journey had been long, filled with pain, silence, and betrayal. But it had also been filled with faith, resilience, and the unshakable bond between a mother and her son. And as the night settled in, I knew this was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning.